Yo, book nerds, I finished my reread of The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I really enjoyed this, even though it was my second go at it. I first read this like back in middle school. Like, it's been over 10 years. It's probably been like 15 years. I don't even know how old I was when I read this, but it's been a long time. But I still had a good time reading it, and I do think that reading the prequels and now revisiting the original trilogy has been awesome. Like, I think that the prequels add so much to this book that I definitely think you can start with the prequels before reading the original trilogy. So let's get into it. What is The Hunger Games about? If you don't know yet, let me tell you. You have Katniss, our protagonist. She lives in Panem. There are 12 districts, and each year the districts have to send a boy and a girl to the capital to participate in the Hunger Games. The Hunger Games is a punishment for a civil war that happened. At this point, it happened 74 years ago. So this is the 74th Hunger Games, where the children that are sent will fight to the death in an arena. And so Katniss is going to be fighting in this year's Hunger Games. Let me just say, the Hunger Games do not go the way the Capitol expect them to go this year, the way anybody expects. So there's some twists and turns. It's a very good story. It keeps you on the edge of your seat. I would classify this as like YA, but I do know that it is sometimes taught in middle schools. So it's definitely for a younger audience than myself now, but keep that in mind as you read if you're an adult. Like, there is teen romances, so like I was not into that. There's a love triangle, I was not into that, but overall I did enjoy myself on this reread. There's a couple things that did bother me. Some of the writing was not the best, I'm gonna just say. There is a ton of sentence fragments, and sentence fragments are fine as long as you use them the right way. Like, sentence fragments should be used to add emphasis. They should be used to create like tension or intensity. They're meant to stand out because usually they're going to slow the reader up when they're reading. It's choppier on purpose. When used correctly, it's very effective. But Collins uses sentence fragments all the time. Almost on every page. You can flip and find sentence fragments on every page, and sometimes multiple on a single page. And so it was too clunky sometimes, and majority of them were not being used to add emphasis. And you might argue like, well, this book came out forever ago. Like, maybe she was a new author and it just was something she was learning, you know, she hadn't honed her craft. But this was an issue that I picked up on even in the prequels, which have just come out recently. So like, I do think that the sentence fragments in her writing is more of a stylistic choice, and I just wasn't really a fan of that. But maybe it didn't bother you. I just didn't really care for it. Collins also has some contractions that were weird. Like, she would contract, like there was one that just sticks in my brain where there's a character named Haymitch, and the sentence reads without the contraction, it would be Haymitch has da 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 da. But she contracted it to Haymitch's, and then the sentence goes on. And when you have an apostrophe S, usually that means it's possessive, or it would be Haymitch is. Now, Haymitch can be a contraction, yes, it can. It's just not as common. And this book is written in present tense, so when I was reading, my brain kept thinking it would be Haymitch is in the present tense, but that didn't make sense with the sentence. And I'd have to keep backing up and go, Haymitch's, Haymitch has. And like, it happened a few times where the contraction was awkward and it slowed me up, and I would have to like stop and figure out what the contraction was supposed to be and continue on after that. So again, like small issues, but overall the story itself was very well told and a lot of fun. which sounds awful because of the content. Like, this content is actually like horrifying when you think about it. It is horrifying. Now I want to get into some like deeper talk. So just know I really enjoyed it. And if you haven't read it, you should. I actually do recommend you read the prequels first before you read this, because I think it will give more depth to what the Hunger Games is. I really enjoyed having read the prequels and now going back into this story. So now I'm going to get into some spoilers. So spoiler alert. I'm going to kind of assume you know what I'm referring to as I talk about this. So, or you're going to find out. But let's talk more about how the prequels add depth. Like, I'm going to assume you've also read the prequels if you're watching this. Maybe you haven't, but spoiler for the prequels as well. But you get so much more depth in this story. At one point, Katniss shoots an apple that's next to a bunch of game makers, and then Katniss freaks out because she's afraid that that might create like repercussions for her family. She worries about her family and what's going to happen to them. And because of the prequels, we know Haymitch's story. Haymitch is Katniss's mentor, and he also had been through the games when he was younger. And because of what happens to Haymitch's family in the prequel, you know that that could happen to Katniss's family when you're reading this. Like, it adds such more depth because you know that the Capitol does hurt people's families. You've seen it if you've read the prequels. Haymitch also calls Katniss sweetheart, which in Haymitch's book, in Sunrise on the Reaping, you know that Haymitch, he has one person in his life that he calls sweetheart, and they have a bond. And like, the fact that he doesn't call anybody else but this one person sweetheart, and now he calls Katniss sweetheart, like, that adds such a level of like care and intimacy. Like, you know he's got strong feelings about Katniss. He really wants to look out for her. And his sweetheart in Sunrise on the Reaping, he couldn't protect her. He couldn't save her. And the fact that Haymitch is now calling Katniss sweetheart, it makes you feel like, man, he's gonna try to really save her. That's his new sweetheart. There is also a song that Katniss sings in this book. She sings it to a girl named Rue, and the song itself is beautiful, but if you have read the prequels, there is so much more depth to that song if you've read Sunrise on the Reaping and if you've read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So, like, if you've read both of the prequels, that song just really packs a punch when it is sung here. Because you know that President Snow knows this song and knows the meaning behind it, and it just adds a whole nother layer. And it's another deeper jab at the Capitol. And Katniss doesn't even know that, but President Snow knows that. So that makes it very interesting. As much as I like kind of took little jabs at the writing, I will say that the writing, apart from the issues that I did have with it, the banter between the other District 12 tribute and Katniss, Peeta and Katniss, like, their banter back and forth is very cute. It is nice. Like, it's good dialogue. I enjoyed it. Some of it was funny. It made me laugh. Adds some humor to the darkness that would be this book otherwise. There is also foreshadowing of what will happen. So that takes talent to layer foreshadowing in without like beating you over the head and giving the ending away. So to like sprinkle things in that later on a reread you can pick up and go, oh, now I see the double meaning there. I see the foreshadowing there. That takes talent. So there's definitely some foreshadowing of how these games will end up. There is a love triangle, like I said. There's teen romance. I just wasn't into that. Whatever. It's fine. I'm just not into reading about teenage romance at this point. I'm almost 30, so no. You're a child. You don't know what love is. Back to kind of talking about the prequels for a second. I do find it interesting that when the games are on, Katniss is always thinking about the cameras and always trying to play things up for the cameras and give them good shots and good facial expressions and things like that. Like, she's very kind of like brainwashed into like, I've got to act for the cameras. And that contrasts extremely well with Haymitch's story from the prequel, where he does not want to be entertainment for the Capitol. He hates the cameras. He doesn't want anyone seeing him. Like, he really hates the fact that everything he does is being recorded. And I just think that's very interesting to see the contrast, which, I mean, they're from different generations. It kind of gives you the sense that Katniss is just so like brainwashed. She's so just like accustomed to what their life is like now, always being monitored, that like it just maybe is normal for her to be playing things up for the cameras. And then like I said, brainwashed. Like, at one point she is like surprised at this realization that she has, that they are being murdered in this arena. Like, yeah, what did you think was happening? Like, she's just so like numb to it that it like shocks her when she realizes that it's murder, that they are being murdered systematically for entertainment. And it just like blows her mind, because like she's just so numb to it all at this point. Like, everyone in the districts, like, they know this has to happen. They know it's evil, but they just think it's like a necessary thing. Like, they don't fight it. And it's just, they're just going about the day to day almost. It's really sad. I did feel like the terrain in these games was very similar to the terrain that we got to see of Haymitch's games. So like in Haymitch's games, there was a mountain and forest, and we focused a lot on the forest, and then we focused a lot on the forest in these games. So I think in Haymitch's story, it would have been cool if the games had been more in the mountains to give us a little bit of a different terrain, but whatever, I'm not the author, so I don't get to decide that. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I'm a hunter, so I always like being in the woods, so who cares? Another cool thing about the prequels is the evolution from the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes to Haymitch's In the Sunrise on the Reaping to the games in the Hunger Games original trilogy. Like, you get to see the evolution of where the games started and how they've changed over time. And I do think that that's very cool to like have that knowledge going into the original trilogy. So that's just another argument to read the prequels first and then go into the original trilogy. But anyway, it's kind of all I have to really say. I really enjoyed my reread. And if you have not read The Hunger Games yet at this point, like, what are you doing? Come on, pick them up. Pick up The Hunger Games. Either start with the original trilogy or start with the prequels. Either way is fine. I do think starting with the prequels would be a really good place to start, and then go into The Hunger Games. But if you don't want to do that, just start with the original trilogy. Just read The Hunger Games. It is a good story. Anyway, I am almost done with Catching Fire, which is the second book in the original trilogy. So that would make it the fourth book overall if you're going from prequels and whatnot. But my copy is extremely beat up. I have 29 pages left. So this is getting finished like really soon, like today or tomorrow. And this will be coming as well. So watch for that. I hope you are having a lovely day today, and I will talk to you next Monday. Hit that like button and subscribe. Thanks for talking books with me.